participants, and one of these sessions that I think can be interesting and useful, not only to the faculty who are teaching English, but to the faculty maybe teaching in English in general. So at first, I don't know how much you're familiar with Tesol. I'm going to give a brief overview of the Tesol conference that happened at the end of March 2022. And then I will focus on one of the most interesting presentations. I'll share my Tesol takeaways, mostly about post-COVID blended learning and points for the evaluation of teaching and learning in post-COVID back to classroom environment. And at the very end, I will currently have, I think, total of 7 people. Depending on how many people we'll have, I thought we can have like a brief 10-minute reflective discussion based on the questions and the content maybe of my talk. All right, so what was Tesol 2022? It was a hybrid convention, right, that went on for 4 days. It had 4 keynote speakers. In all fairness, keynote speakers were quite, well, famous, but the keynote speeches were quite general. But the best part for me was the recorded sessions that I could attend, and I could enjoy also like interacting with the speakers after their sessions were over using chat function, right? This year it was hybrid, right? So International Convention of and English Language Expo 2022, it was a hybrid format which incorporated 3 forms of presentations and attendance, right? So it had an in-person attendees, right, whose presentations were live streamed and also recorded, right? So it had 2,000 plus in-person attendees this year, right? Also, it had real-time virtual presentations for the participants who couldn't attend in person, but still could give presentations real-time, which were also recorded with post-presentation real live Q&A session, and also a synchronous Q&A session in the chat. And finally, there was a third part of it, which was on-demand pre-recorded presentations. So for the presenters who could not present in real time, even online, but they could submit their presentations or talks or workshops, right? And also there was a Q&A, a synchronous chat function there where you can interact with the all the presenters, right? And other participants. There were also in-person and online mingling events that were quite interesting for, making connections or exchanging experience over this past 2 years from COVID teaching. Another great part of it was that as it was hybrid and pretty much everything was recorded, the access to all the materials was extended for a month. So although the conference was at the end of March, between the 23rd and 25th of March, the access to the most of the online recordings was till the end of April, 22nd of April, right? So I think this way I could actually attend and enjoy and rewatch way more talks that, in a regular conference. The website was pretty amazing, really easy to navigate and very easy to listen to the recordings, right? So there were quite a number of themed sessions, right? They were not only language focused, right? Of course, there were sessions such as reading and writing and literacy, or for example, materials development and publishing, but there were a lot of sessions devoted to broader social topics such as advocacy, social justice, and community building, right? Culture and cultural communication. Quite an interesting one was digital learning and technologies, of course, teacher education, program administration, and evaluation. So within these sessions, right, we'd have different problems related to post-COVID teaching addressed in the talks. So this is like a screenshot of the program. For example, you could have like concurrent sessions you could choose from, or if you, for example, have 2 sessions that are happening at the same time, you you can like watch them in the recording, and then you have also scheduled for on-demand sessions, right? Um, Main problems that were discussed in the sessions, I think like one of the biggest themes was that return to the classroom, so back to normal versus new normal, to make sure the internet is better, right? So should education and professional development be as pre-COVID, or should it change? That was like a wide main theme of many presentations. A lot of universities went back to in-person teaching last semester in September, or but uh, so it was very interesting to hear the feedback and the problems that they were facing. Re-evaluation of digital tools, what tools to keep, what tools to not to keep, and why and how. Using digital tools and online learning for more inclusive and accessible education. That was a big topic as well. Motivation, mindfulness, mental health among teachers and students during post-pandemic. I think this is one of the things that is not broadly discussed recently, but I think it's a very important thing that needs to be looked at and considered. Right, and reimagining, rethinking, re-evaluating pre-COVID teaching and learning and post-COVID teaching and learning, right? One more interesting thing and useful thing for maybe after this presentation is the electronic village that Tesol has. And it's the computer-assisted language learning intersection, which is still available in the YouTube. They have their own YouTube channel. And I am gonna quickly show you the, yes. So I think anyone can join it, can have a look at and maybe find some presentations here related to computer-assisted language learning. But there are a lot of tools that are not language specific. For example, collaborative tools for extensive reading and listening activities, which can be applied not only to pure like language learning, but they also can be widely used in other classes. Right. So at the end of my, I'm gonna reshare the slides. Okay, at the very end of my presentation, you can find like the links. If you are interested, you can always go and watch some of the talks, workshops, presentations on the YouTube. All right. So today I'm going to briefly share the main takeaways from this presentation, which was called Teaching Beyond COVID-19, Reimagining in-person instruction after remote teaching. The presentation was done by two professors from Vanderbilt University, Stephanie Gollobin and Carrie Cargile. And this is the abstract for their talk. So I will probably focus mostly, I'm not going to go into the details about their case studies, but I will present the most interesting things that can be useful for our own maybe imagining or re-evaluation of our courses. All right. So post-COVID teaching and learning in higher education institutions, right? So that's not only our current problem, it's a problem that a lot of universities all over the world are now facing, right? So pre-COVID, teaching was mostly traditional in-person learning and teaching, right, in classroom, and it was quite a conservative, long-term established approach, right? And then a lot of universities, including Todai, had to go to emergency remote learning and teaching, right? So it was not a pre-planned online teaching, it was an emergency shift for both teachers and students, and of course, well, I mean, administration universities to go online. So one of the ideas for the post-COVID return to in-person teaching is not to go back to the pre-COVID traditional style, but have blended or enhanced learning or teaching, right? So we do not go back to square one. And blended learning or teaching can be defined as meaningful incorporation of online educational activities into in-person class activities. And Garis and Ankunuka emphasize that courses embracing blended learning or teaching aren't universal, but content and context specific. So it's impossible to replicate what is working in another university institution, because to have this blended learning and teaching really effective for your course, for your program, you should really look into what you need from available online tools and resources, and to make your teaching and learning experiences better, right? There is no one recipe for all. Okay. So again, going back to our presenters, they suggested three main points for re-evaluating and reimagining teaching and learning post-COVID, right? So the three main points were accessibility, engagement, and authenticity. Sorry. So I'm gonna go over each point one by one. So accessibility. So what they took from online teaching and learning into post-online teaching and learning is they kept the introduction and operation of university learning management systems as available online, like recordings explaining the navigation of systems that allowed of saving quite a lot of classroom time for like in orientation, and students could go back again and again to review the points or problems they had or questions they had about navigation, the learning system. And I think this is quite important for at least my courses, because we have first year students who are just joining university and they still are not really used to the university system, right? They kept participation in meetings and dealing with absences as with an online option, which is also makes it way more efficient for teachers to operate their time if they can participate in meetings online. And dealing with absences gives, now we have extra forms such as video recordings or incorporated students via Zoom, if it's important for students to be, present in the classroom one way or another during the class. All right. So also understanding of the materials and preparation for the class and tests has been improved with creation of extra online materials and improving the materials from the emergency remote learning. And also one of the important parts that they kept was the records of materials for further professional development, reflection, and teacher training, right? So as we have technologies that allow of keeping quite a lot of digital record, that made it more possible and better for the professional development. Right. Engagement, the engagement part of the keeping online elements is online introductions of students, teachers, courses for better rapport. Collaborative learning, like easier integration of task-based learning and cooperation. Preparation for in-class activities. Post-class extended discussion for reflection and revision. So when we have students leaving their comments on, for example, if we use in Slack or we have using Stream in the Google Classroom, students can go back and review their comments or look at other students' ideas and replies, and that continues into next class. Also, individualized learning catering to each student's needs and interests. And finally, authenticity, which is probably very important for particularly language teaching, right? Because we need to have authentic materials for that. But also another part was that integration of some online tools, such as, for example, Zoom, made it easier to access different guest lecturers and presenters. They could be interesting and motivating and authentic for students to, work with or, experience in their classes. Also, apparently we have a new, even newer 21st century skills, right? So students are developing like proper virtual presentation skills, use of online collaborative tools, first-hand online working experience that can be probably very useful for them in the future, and more effective use of in-class time. So these are 3 points that the presenter suggested to think and reevaluate your own teaching or your programs or courses based on those points. So my personal takeaways for like my course was actually accessibility and engagement and authenticity, like divided into groups. My big takeaway for this semester is providing better options for students with special needs, such as individual assignments, online consultations, when they feel maybe in a better mental state to contact me, so we can have very flexible schedule for that, and give them options such as like recording presentations. So if they feel uncomfortable presenting in person, they have other options to still practice this needs and skills. And also providing better maybe options for emergency situations and absences, right? Such as like potential for hybrid participation. And also quite a big part, the meetings and collaboration with my colleagues and co-researchers was a big part of, became it more like accessible for continuing research projects or coming up with new ones. As for engagement and authenticity, I think my students got a much better understanding and mental preparation for flipped classrooms. So their interaction with existing online lectures is much deeper and better than it was before COVID. So I really hope this will continue. Collaboration and extended discussions outside of the classroom. Students are much better dealing with collaborative tools and preparing difficult collaborative tasks such as research proposals for their group projects, working outside of the classroom, and better interaction with online media and multimodal activities. Also, I've noticed that a lot from students, and I'm gonna continue like helping them, like creating activities that would integrate those multimodal tasks, so they can continue developing different skills, not only just reading and writing. All right. So the 3 dimensions of reflecting, readjusting, and reinventing teaching of courses, not only English, at higher educational institutions, but I think they should be considered not only at the level of teachers, but also at the level of the university itself and program and course, and also as well as through individual group discussions for brainstorming and exchanging ideas and experiences. And students' input, I think, also very, very important, because teachers can have their own point of view, but I think students also know better how much of this is working for them. So at the final part, I would like you to consider the 3 aspects: accessibility, engagement, and authenticity for discussing or sharing your own experiences or ideas regarding these 3 questions, right? I think we have like still like 6 people, so maybe one group would be all right, or we can have smaller groups. Regarding these 3 questions, how do or did your remote teaching practices contribute to accessibility? Which of these practices can be continued in in-person teaching? How do or did your remote teaching practices facilitate students' engagement? And which of these practices can be used to help improve students' engagement in the real classroom? And how did the remote teaching practices support authenticity, and how the use of online teaching learning tools and in-person teaching can contribute to the authenticity of learning materials or process?